Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. We're 2 days past the noble end of Bill Cassidy's Senate uh, life. Um, you know, Cassidy, or Dr. Cassidy, as he prefers to be called, which makes sense. He is a doctor. I think is an absolute perfect poster child of what Republicans who have gone along with Trump, even though they knew it was wrong, the fate that awaits them. And let's talk about Dr. Cassidy. As a young doctor down in Louisiana, he devoted tremendous time and effort to establishing and supporting vaccine programs in public schools, particularly for underprivileged children. When he got elected to the State House, this was a cause of his. He was a vaccine guy. He's a doctor. He gets elected to the U.S. Senate. What does he do? He casts the deciding vote to put this lunatic, this ex-junkie, steroid-abusing, crazy person as head of America's healthcare. I don't understand how you could be a doctor and think that that's consistent with your oath. So he does it. Why? Well, I suppose he does it because he thinks he may lose a primary if he doesn't. So how'd that work out? So he voted to impeach Donald Trump. Now, if a handful of other Republicans had joined him and Mitt Romney and others in doing that, the country would be a lot better off. The Republican Party would be a lot better off. And to the extent it matters, Senator Cassidy would still be a U.S. Senator or have a chance to be reelected, which he would be. He wouldn't be opposed in a primary. But no, other Republicans didn't go along with it. Even though Mitch McConnell went out and gave a speech after this vote outlining exactly why he should have voted yes. It's one of the most lunatic speeches you can imagine. You know, it's like a juror voting to quit and then coming out of the jury box and go, well, the guy's a murderer. And we all know it. But, I didn't vote to acquit because I thought he might be mean to my wife or something. When I was drawn to the Republican Party, one of the first principles, let's call it, absolute cornerstone of it, was character counts, character's destiny. Peggy Noonan wrote a book about Reagan called When Character Was King. And that was right. Character is destiny. But now, it's not that the Republican Party's drifted away from that. It's come to the opposite conclusion. It asserts now, well, we're not electing a priest, so it doesn't matter about Donald Trump. The problem is it does matter. And there also was this principle in the Republican Party that you don't negotiate with terrorists. That feeding the alligator, hoping the alligator will eat you last, never works. So, as it turns out, both of those are lies, which is why one of the reasons, along with other principles like strong on Russia, personal responsibility, that I didn't know any other conclusion to write when I wrote this book. Call it it was all a lie. How the Republican Party became Donald Trump. And if you step back, when Donald Trump got elected in 2016, a lot of people from my Republican tribe, which the Bush tribe, told themselves, Donald Trump has hijacked the party. And man, I wanted to believe that. But it never made sense. The hijacker on the plane is never popular. Nobody goes, hey, look, we get to go to Cuba. We're not going to grandma's. But Donald Trump was wildly popular. The only reason Donald Trump has taken over the Republican Party is because Republicans wanted him to take over the Republican Party. So, you know, a Faustian bargain. And what it's easy to forget about Mephistopheles is not only does he take your soul, he doesn't deliver. And on Saturday, Dr. Bill Cassidy, soon to be ex-Senator Bill Cassidy, learned that lesson. And if the Republican Party had stood up the elected officials to Donald Trump, this didn't have to happen. And, you know, in our system, parties are designed to be circuit breakers. And the Republican Party never pulled a circuit breaker on Donald Trump. And, you know, I spent, in retrospect, way too much of my career pointing out flaws in the Democratic Party. But in 2004, when there was a very close presidential election, I was working for Bush versus Kerry. You know, people forget Bush didn't declare victory on election night. And it was because theoretically, John Kerry could still win Ohio. Theoretically, in the sense that there was enough provisional ballots that if he won some extraordinary percentage of them, like 80%, he could still win Ohio. Now, everybody knew he wasn't going to win 80% of provisional ballots. But the President Bush, he didn't go out and declare victory. Did it the next day after provisional ballots had been counted, had this weird event over at the RNC. It was like, okay. So think about what would have happened if John Kerry had said, no, I won Ohio. I refuse to recognize Donald Trump, George Bush's illegitimate president. The Democratic Party would have taken his head off. The New York Times would have called for him to resign from the Senate. There's no equivalency here. What happened when the Republican Party did this? When Donald Trump refused to acknowledge that he was defeated by 8 million votes? They said, well, what's it matter? Just kid him. And I think, you know, just go along with it. And I hope on January 6th, when a lot of these senators were running for their lives, they found out that maybe it did matter. So I don't think we've ever seen a party that has collapsed morally the way the Republican Party has. And this is why I say that we really can't look at the Republican Party today as a normal governing traditional American party. It's an extremist movement. And how do you advance an extremist movement? You become more extreme. Donald Trump announces in 2015 and goes off about Mexicans are rapists and builds a wall. So cut to 2026, you have an army of masked men, heavily armed, chasing brown people around the country and shooting protesters in the face. So the idea of saying that they're rapists, it's kind of old hat. I mean, you're out there, an army, the larger budget of the Marines. So what does JD Vance learn from this? JD Vance, you know, think about it. Say you're a staffer for JD Vance. You're sitting around his office and he reads that a bunch of Republicans, a lot of Republicans, on the young side, but none of them kids, have thousands of messages in a group praising Hitler. And JD Vance decides, and praising Nazis in general, JD Vance decides, you know, guys, I'm going to defend that. Can you imagine that? I mean, you might go like, boss, I don't know, defending Nazis, but he did it. And why did he do it? Because he believes, and I think correctly, that the way to advance the Republican Party, as advancing an extremist movement, is to be more transgressive. And it's like, okay, Mario, follow me. You going to do that? I mean, yeah, Mexicans are rapists. Yeah, we're okay with blowing up drug dealers or supposed drug dealers, even though your brother-in-law is a Cuban-born, convicted narco cartel drug dealer, which, you know, Mario Rubio now says the proper response to that would have been just to blow the guy up. But is Mario Rubio going to defend Nazis? Probably not. And this is why JD Vance is going to be the nominee, among other reasons. Every time you have an incumbent vice president who runs for the nomination of a sitting president, when the seat comes open, they win the nomination. Not the race, but they win the nomination. And with Trump, I think that Trump appoints these fools, knaves, conspiracy theorists, drunks, lunatics to run the government. Not because he thinks that they're not fools, drunks, knaves, dangerous people. He does it to prove that he can make U.S. senators do whatever he wants, even if they know it's bad for the country, even if they know it's humiliating. So what better proof than I'm going to get the guy, signed a Hippocratic oath. It's a doctor who the trademark of his career was pro-vaccines. I'm going to get him to be the deciding vote for RFK Jr., who's has a problem with the cancer vaccine, doesn't think it can work, has a problem with the polio vaccine. Yeah, I'm right. He'll do it. And, JD Vance, what is JD Vance's two great principles, supposedly? One is against foreign wars. So he goes out there and he has to defend Trump's war, and I think Trump just laughs his ass off. And the other is, that he's a big Catholic. So Trump goes and attacks the Pope. And it's like, okay, JD, you got a problem with that? You going to say anything? No, you're not, are you? I knew you wouldn't. And I think that when Trump looks at it, that disgusts him. But I think that JD Vance will run, and I think he will run with a Trump on the ticket. Either Ivanka or one of those lunatic sons. I don't think they'll win, but I don't think he'll get elected president and vice president, but I think they'll win the nomination. So what I would say to my old Republican friends in the Senate, Congress, a lot of them I helped elect, guys, is it worth it? Really? What do you get out of this? You think your children are going to read about you? You were for Kash Patel? Really? You were for Stephen Miller? If this plays out as it should, Kash Patel and Stephen Miller should be prosecuted. You were for Kristi Noem? Really? And they'll say, well, yeah. Well, you had to be there. It would have been worse if I wasn't there. Which is exactly what every Norwegian that supported Quisling in World War II said. It'd be worse if I wasn't there. What every Frenchman who supported the Vichy government said. Well, it'd be worse. I don't know. As Republicans, we used to attack Democrats for situational ethics. It wasn't really fair, but we did it. Is this not what has happened now with all these sad characters? And what kind of role model are they? And we believe, remember when all this was going down with Clinton in the late 90s, Monica Lewinsky, and all the stuff was written by Republicans. Beautiful stuff like by Bill Bennett. How being president is more than just an executive office, it's the soul of the nation and all that. That was true then, but there's a lot worse things than what happened with Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. But it's true with Donald Trump. And what does it say? You really want to tell your kids, look at Donald Trump and be a role model? Really? Dr. Cassidy, is that what you want? Look at RFK Jr., be a role model? So I think that the lesson it gives to this whole group of young Republicans is, doesn't matter. But I think the rest of the country believes it does matter. And just think about it. What it's like to grow up as American now, and you can't look at your president and be proud of him. Compare that to what it's like to be a Ukrainian growing up. You look at your president. He's courageous. He's really, in many ways, the leader of the free world. You aspire to that. It says something about your country. It says something about you. And sadly, Donald Trump says something about us and about our country. And they'll all end up like Bill Cassidy. It will never be worth it. So, I'm sorry, dude. You got what you wanted. The person who's going to follow you is going to be worse. Probably you're going to have the same thing play out in Texas. And it's just not worth it. Don't do it. You can always say no. So, with that little bit of optimism, thanks. And let's keep fighting because we will win. And the best fights you get in are not because you know you'll win, but because you need to fight. But we will fight this. We will win this. Thanks for joining.